The $100 to $150 price range is one of the most competitive in the knife world. You can get a Spyderco, a Kaiser, a Wee, or any number of premium Civivis. So where does this little Vosteed Hedgehog fit in? With S35 VN steel, aluminum handles, a top liner lock, and multiple deployment methods, it certainly looks like a winner on paper. But after carrying it and using it, is this the one actually worth your money? Let's find out. Vosteed has been on a bit of a hot streak lately. They aren't just pumping out more crossbar lock knives with different scales. They've actually been experimenting with their own lock designs, blade shapes, ergonomics, and even swappable scales. And to be fair, when Vosteed first came on the scene, and I'm going to be honest, I really wasn't impressed. Because one of their earlier models was the Raccoon. I remember having some lock failure, as when people would hit the spine of the blade when it was deployed, it would close, and they ended up doing a really big recall in those first batches. So I was kind of put off on the brand for a while. But recently, they just seem to put out insane knife after insane knife. We have super cool stuff like the Psyop, the Vombat, and then the Ankelo. Just some really, really cool looking knives. And the Hedgehog kind of seems to continue that trend. It's a really great, aggressive looking knife. It's a really compact, everyday carry knife, but it doesn't really feel like a small one once it's in your hand. It kind of has a chunky build without really becoming a true brick in your pocket. So here's some really quick specs. We have a 2.99 inch blade of S35VN. It's a modified sheep's foot. We have a flat grind, aluminum scaled with frag milling, a top liner lock, ceramic ball bearings. We have thumb thuds, fuller, and a rear flipper deployment. We have a reverse deep carry pocket clip, and this comes in around 7.11 inches long, 4.12 inches close or handle length, and around 4.4 inches. If the specs get your attention, then the action will probably sell you on this knife. You actually have 3 or 4 different ways to deploy the blade depending on how you look at it. You can either use the thumb studs, you can use the rear flipper, or you can use the top liner lock, or even use the fuller on the blade, even though this one's a little bit harder. But every deployment method here feels really smooth. None of them really feel like they were added just so the marketing department could list it as another feature. They all work really well, and it makes this an extremely fidgety knife to play with because you can just constantly switch it up. But the real star of the show here is the top liner lock. If you've never used one, it feels like a really nice evolution over the traditional liner lock. Because instead of sticking your thumb into the blade path to disengage the lock, you're pressing down on a tab that moves the liner out of the way. It keeps your fingers safely clear while still giving a pretty satisfying mechanical feeling, and I really like it. I would say this is kind of similar to a button lock, but I actually prefer this one so much more. It's incredibly smooth, it's very intuitive, and honestly one of the more fun locks on the designs on the market right now. And then combine that with ceramic bearings and kind of a heavy blade, the action here is just excellent. The detent feels dialed, the blade flies open, it drops shut with almost no effort. It's definitely one of those knives that you end up opening like 20 times sitting at your desk for absolutely no reason, and ask me how I know. Because also on the topic of the action, I kind of want to pivot over to the blade because I really like this blade here. In fact, this blade shape is one of my favorite parts of the knife. I've always been a really big fan of sheepsfoot blades, and this one gives you a really nice strong tip for precision work while still leaving enough belly for slicing. So whether you're opening packages, cutting zip ties, or breaking down cardboard, just a really practical shape, and I love seeing it in more knives. And then there's the steel. S35VN isn't the newest super steel anymore, but honestly, I really don't care. It's still one of my favorites because it strikes a really good balance. You get really good edge retention, excellent corrosion resistance, respectable toughness. It's much easier to sharpen some of the newer steels everyone's chasing. So for an EDC knife, this is the combination that's pretty hard to complain about. Despite being a compact knife, this actually fits in the hand surprisingly well. The finger groove here naturally locks your grip into place, and if you want a little bit more control, you actually got a pretty generous forward finger choil that lets you choke up on the blade, and this jimping here on the spine is actually pretty well done too. It's noticeable enough to provide a really nice grip without really feeling like it's chewing up your thumb. And this finger choil paired with this jimping just really locks you in, and it's surprising because of the size and how actually comfortable this is. I also like these aluminum scales here. Sometimes aluminum can feel a little slick, but they added some frag milling here at the bottom, and that adds enough texture you can always feel pretty planted without it feeling really uncomfortable or rough. And to be honest, I've actually never really been a huge fan of the frag pattern, but I really like how it works on this knife for some reason, and it gives it a little bit more visual interest, which I'll never complain about. Now, at 4.4 ounces, this isn't exactly what I would call lightweight. You definitely notice it compared to some other knives out there when it's in your pocket. But for me personally, I don't mind it so much because the knife feels incredibly solid. But if you're somebody who carries like featherweight folders, it's definitely something to keep in mind. I will say this deep carry clip works pretty well, the retention is good, and overall kind of disappears in the pocket better than the weight would kind of suggest. I did add a small lanyard here just to give it a little bit more grip in hand, and it also makes it a little bit tad easier to fish out of the pocket. Now, if you can't tell, I actually really like this knife. But as everything in this world, nothing is perfect, and this has a few things I could live without. So first up, the positives. And the first thing that stands out is just the overall quality. Everything feels really nicely machined. The fit and finish is all excellent here. The lockup is rock solid. Centering is perfect. There's no blade play. Everything just feels perfect and not cheap. It's just a very nice in hand. It feels really high quality. Second is the action. And whether you're using the flipper, the thumb studs, or even the fuller, it's just a really nice little fun knife to interact with. Because the top liner lock on here is just dialed in so well, and probably the best I've ever used. It's really fun to fidget with, and having all these different deployment methods just kind of adds to that fidget factor, and it's even better because all of them just work so well. Finally, I think Vosti kind of nailed the ergonomics. Even with this small size, you'd kind of think this is just a small chunk of metal, but in hand, it's actually surprisingly comfortable due to the handle and the finger choil on the blade. It's comfortable, it's secure, it's extremely usable for like everyday tasks. I just really like this knife a lot. As much as I like this knife, there are a few things worth mentioning. First is the weight. It's not excessive, but for a knife around 4 inches when closed, 4.4 ounces is definitely on the heavier side. This isn't made to be carried in gym shorts, and you'll definitely feel this in your pocket. Second, the styling is a little bold, with the frag milling, the overall shape with these straight lines, and kind of the aggressive blade, and the chunky profile. This isn't going to appeal to everyone. I think it really works, but if you prefer sleek, like more minimalist knives, this probably isn't the one. And then finally, one could probably argue the price. I'll cover it later on in the video, but this is a crowded market here. There are a lot of really good knives around this price point. So Vosti isn't just competing against average knives, they're competing against some of the best values in the industry. Looking at several different retailers, this knife is coming in at $159 at the highest, and at the lowest around $130. So regardless of what end you look at, the Hedgehog sits in one of the toughest price brackets out there. You're competing with Spyderco, Kaiser, Wee, premium Civivis, and even some Benchmade models if you catch a good sale. So that's some pretty serious competition. But Vosti packs an S35VN, aluminum scales, ceramic bearings, really nice machining, and a top liner lock. So when you compare feature for feature, it's kind of hard to argue you aren't getting a lot for your money. For me, I'm definitely more budget focused, and I often limit my knife purchases to stuff under the $100 mark. And I was really fortunate to purchase this knife secondhand at a really large discount. After having it in hand, I really do like it. But do I like it enough to pay full retail price for one if I had to do this over again? It's tough. If I had to pay at the top end, so like $159 for it, I would say no. But at $130, I think that's so much more fair. So would I recommend the Vosti Hedgehog? Absolutely. If you're shopping in that $100 to $150 range and you want something that's different from the sea of crossbar locks and titanium frame locks, I think this deserves a spot on your shortlist. It has premium materials, excellent action, really nice ergos, and one of the most enjoyable locking mechanisms available today, plus tons of different opening methods. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more EDC content, and let me know down in the comments, if you get $130 to spend today, would you pick up the Hedgehog, or would you go with something from Spyderco, Kaiser, Civivi, or somebody else? I'm curious to hear what you choose. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.